I just wanted to welcome you all before I turn it over to Dr. Smith, our scholar in residence. Just to tell you a little bit about the Lunch and Learn initiative. It was something we started this fall, and the idea of Lunch and Learn was we wanted to give students an opportunity to have casual conversation about different topics with faculty and staff from across campus. So typically what we do, we just have conversations about different topics that the faculty and staff might have an interest or expertise in, and it's supposed to just be informal, casual conversation. So I ask you all to please engage with our speakers that we have here today as part of that focus of this initiative.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Liam. My name is Gerald Smith. I am Martin Luther King Scholar in Residence. Oh, perfect timing. All right. We are delighted to have the program this afternoon. Our special speaker is the president, Dr. Capilouto, who is the 12th president of the University of Kentucky. He became president on July the 1st of 2011. We'll give him an opportunity to place his coat. Dr. Capilouto arrived at the University of Kentucky, and since then, of course, has been working to establish a $1 billion ongoing approved capital construction project to enhance and expand the quality living and learning experience on UK's campus. He holds several undergraduate and graduate degrees from the University of Alabama System, has a doctorate in health policy and management from Harvard University. His wife, Dr. Mary Lynn Capilouto, is a former dean of the UAB School of Dentistry, and they have one daughter. Our second speaker will be Dr. Judy J.J. Jackson. She became UK's first vice president for Institutional Diversity on July the 1st of 2008. Dr. Jackson advises the president and provost on all academic, fiscal, and administrative policy decisions regarding the university's diversity goals, on developing, implementing, and evaluating the university diversity plan, and on activity community involvement around diversity issues. So we're grateful and appreciative to have the president here and Vice President Jackson, and their topic of discussion this afternoon is going to be stereotype threat. And so I'll turn it over to them. Let's give them a warm welcome.
So Gerald, thank you. I hate to correct you, but I will from the beginning. I'm not coming here to speak today. I'm coming here to listen. One of the chief responsibilities you have as the president of the university is to better understand the people you serve. I think certainly events over the last several months, which are not new to this country, precipitate discussions that I hope one uses in a way to make things better. And that is the responsibility that I have as president of the University of Kentucky. I have lots of wonderful help in that regard, but the opportunities to interface with members of our community, student, faculty, and staff on occasions like this are quite valuable to me. Dr. Jackson is wise counsel to me, and I know she counsels students collectively and individually, but she's particularly helpful to me to work through the things that every individual holds within their heart and soul that comes from your life experiences that make you think rightly and sometimes wrongly, even when you don't realize it. I've told the story before. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. I lived there 40 years. I participated in something called Leadership Birmingham. It was started probably now 35 years ago. The first weekend retreat included Reverend Shuttlesworth. If you know the story of Birmingham and the marches there, Dr. King was reluctant about coming to Birmingham. If you know the story, if it wasn't for the persistence of Reverend Shuttlesworth, he may not have stayed. Reverend Shuttlesworth is one dynamic force and one courageous man. You can find easily the days he walked his children into Phillips High School and was beaten badly. But he turned around and did it again and again. 50 homes were bombed in Birmingham during that period. But he never wavered. But he brought people together on the beginning of that weekend. And after one weekend, people who hadn't really talked to each other decided they would compose what they call the Birmingham Pledge. And it opens with, all of us hold bias. And we all have to work on it. And we have much work to do in this country, and it's not about simply counting. It's not just our numbers. You know, it's sort of what is within us. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Jones.
Thank you, Dr. Capilouto. Hi, everybody. And welcome as you say hello to your next bite. When Khalil asked if we would talk about stereotype threat, we thought it was a great opportunity, and given the events of the past few months across the country, I think it's a good time to talk about stereotype threat, not just in the context of what's been happening across the country, but your life on campus and your life in your community and your life in this country. Because this concept is pervasive crosses boundaries of age, station, geography, where you're from, what year you are in college, what your ethnic background is, almost everything. So Claude Steele, who is a well-known sociopsychologist, has coined the term stereotype threat, and he defines it, if I could just use a couple of words, as the risk of giving truth to negative stereotypes about the group that you belong to. So you might hear, well, women really aren't that good in math. And so when women get into a classroom and there are lots of guys in there, the fear that they're going to give truth to that stereotype actually has an impact on their performance. And so they wind up sometimes not doing as well because they tighten up psychologically, emotionally, and wind up unintentionally giving truth to the stereotype. It happens with folks from other groups as well. Age. Of course, to me, I define age. And I really I'm not that concerned about whether somebody thinks I can't do something because of my age, because the reality is, was that an endorsement of what I just said? That's okay. Just, as my son would say, I'm just messing with you. So anyway, you get the idea, right? So when we talk about what we're trying to do at UK, so that every student feels as if he and she have an equitable opportunity to pursue their goals for coming here. We recognize that once you set a goal, you have to decide, okay, how are we going to get there? And in order to decide how you're going to get there, you have to take into account any obstacles that might be in your way from getting there. So we think that stereotype threat may play a role in whether you feel as if you belong to this community, whether you feel you're doing your best in school. And it's not just stereotypes, it's lots of things to be considered. So just because we're talking about stereotype threat today doesn't mean that we have ignored all the other things that go along with your feeling as if this community belongs to you as well. So Khalil said we could take this conversation where we wanted to, so we start out with stereotype threat. If we feel the need to talk about other things that are related to that, that's fine. And as President Capilouto said, it's not our intention to be lecturing today. I personally really don't like lecturing. I prefer to have a conversation. So if what we have said about stereotype threat is enough, then maybe we could get started with a conversation. Are you guys ready? That's kind of quiet. Okay. Does somebody want to start with a comment or a question? Okay.
Oh, I hope I don't sound radical or anything,
Oh,
but
here we go. You have the first radical person.
so why is the title of this meeting the stereotype? Why is it not racism or prejudice or discrimination? I don't understand this, but why are we making it like sound like, oh, the stereotype, oh, there's some, it's not this light. It's serious. I'm sorry if our white friends can't feel it, and they have all the right because they don't know how it is. But what is a stereotype? I mean, I don't know what is the title of, we know what a stereotype is, and we know what racism is. It's got nothing to do with that one. So,
Are you going to keep talking or you going to let me
no,
answer?
I'm just saying, like, let's not sugarcoat it. That's what I'm saying.
I don't think it was our intent to sugarcoat anything. And as I said before, there are so many things to talk about. We have less than an hour. So we were asked today to at least start out focusing on stereotype threat, which includes racism. And when we think about stereotype threat and think about it in the context of racism, then the way that plays out is that because I'm a black person, the risk that I run, stereotype threat would have that definition, is that because I'm a black woman, I'm afraid that I'm not going to get this job, or I won't be expected to do as good a job in the position that I have, or that's the way stereotype threat works. And so if we raise our consciousness about stereotype threat, then the awareness itself of that empowers us to not let it have that effect on us. And when you are aware, then you can help others to be aware. So it's not about sugarcoating. It's not about trying to pretty things up or pretend it's not there. It's about meeting it head on, actually. But we have to have a workable name for it. I mean, when you name it, you can claim it. And that's what we have done, well, actually, Claude Steele, by giving it a name. So now let's claim it and say what it's doing to us and what impact it has in our lives. So I think that's a direct hit and not avoiding talking about racism. It actually helps us to talk about racism. Oh, don't even try.
I was just wondering, is the university going to make any moves, here soon in order to bring, classes to bring more consciousness to those who don't have the consciousness? As far as, adding sociology to the core requirement with a certain history class.
We have our chief academic officer here, the provost. And Chris, if you don't mind, when it comes to the curriculum, you're closer to this than I am. Have we explicitly, through our core curriculum reform, with purpose tried to, we have a rubric where you can get a course approved for inclusion in the core curriculum. This was developed 5 or 6 years ago, this new reform curriculum. And I'm sorry, I'm uncertain if through those different categories of options that one takes in accord with your major and your core, do we provide strong opportunity in those areas?
There is currently a category called cultural awareness in terms of the core curriculum, and there are classes that are associated with that that come out of sociology and other places. Have we done enough? I think is the question. The answer is no. Jake Ingram, our president of the Student Government Association, has just recently written an article on inclusion, and he says it's all of our responsibility to really be thinking about the changes that we make on this campus, and that also includes within the curriculum as well as what we're doing from a leadership perspective. So I would say that the conversations are starting to escalate and come up in a really positive way about the changes we need to make. And we do have the mechanisms to continue to push forward in our core curriculum.
And if I might add to that as well in response to your question, I offer a course on the life and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. I only have 4 students enrolled at this time. So unless I get 6 more students, that course is going to drop in the spring. Teach a course on the Kentucky African American experience. Teach a course on civil rights. We're teaching another course in the spring on race and sports in American society. So the courses are available. We just want to carry you to a road.
That's why I asked mainly, like, what is the university doing to, like, in order to, I guess, require people to take those kind of classes? Because as far as in, like, you might offer them and you may have, like, a broad spectrum of people don't have to take those courses. You know what I'm saying? So, is there a way where you get that student to where there is, where you basically let people take it?
I would add that this is a great dialogue to have with our faculty, because the president, provost certainly oversee activities and curriculum, but a lot of this bubbles up from our faculty. And this is the kind of conversation we need to have, how we best ensure that this is incorporated in some way with respect to, we got 200 majors on this campus, all of whom, may focus on what they think the competencies are in their particular area. Maybe this needs to be one that reaches across most of them. So I think that's an excellent point that we need to purpose raise.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I want to address this issue too, and bouncing off something President Capilouto said about talking to the faculty. I've been in academic business for almost 2 decades now as a, oh, sorry. I'm Arnold Fart. I'm in the philosophy department here at the University of Kentucky, Arnold Fart. So I've been struggling with this for almost 2 decades in terms of trying to have a more diverse curriculum. And talking to faculty is very important, because one of the problems, I use the term in my work, I do work in philosophy of race, racialized consciousness. And I use that term to avoid using racism because quite often our institutions, even our curriculum, so on and so forth, is determined by what I call racialized consciousness. So you can perpetuate a racist system without being intentionally and consciously racist, right? And so a lot of people say, I'm not racist, and they really mean that, but they have a pattern of behavior and a pattern of thinking that perpetuates the very problem we're trying to combat. And that academia is replete with it. And our disciplines, the way our academic disciplines are defined, the way they are shaped. I tell people say often to professors, you shouldn't be political in the classroom. And I say, if you teach, that's a political act. Every time you walk into the classroom, it's a political act, because you determine what people should read. You determine what texts, as a faculty member, what texts are important. You determine what people should know, and that's a political act. You determine also what to leave out, what to avoid talking about, what to avoid reading. So this is really something you need to talk with faculty about too, because disciplines, academic disciplines, need to change also in order to address this issue. In philosophy, my discipline, it's only recent that people are beginning to pay attention to feminist and African American philosophy. When I first started working on my PhD, I had an interest in philosophy of race, but I avoided it because I didn't want to be called the race god. Because for a lot of philosophers all over the country, if you do feminist philosophy or philosophy of race, that's not real philosophy. In fact, that's been said by philosophers on this campus before. That's not real philosophy, because you're coming from a particular perspective as if they're not, right? So I think, I don't want to go on, but it's very important to talk to faculty, because we need to really rethink the way our academic disciplines work if we're going to adequately deal with these issues. Sorry for taking so much time.
Oh, that's okay. And that's part of the reason that we come together to talk about all the different issues that Khalil and his staff bring up. And we can never have enough time to exhaust the possibilities of what we could talk about, but we just try to do our best in the time that we have. And to that end, I will say that several years ago, the faculty in creating the new Common Core actually talked about the need for all students to be exposed to issues around diversity. And so there is a requirement in the Common Core that all students have to take at least 2 courses. And at last count, there were about 60 courses in that lineup that satisfied that requirement. And so whatever your major is, whatever the department is, if you would go online and look at all of the courses listed for that major or that discipline, you might find that there may be more courses than you realize, and depending on the title, it may or may not sound like a course around diversity, but go in it and then ask the professor or someone in the department, what is involved in this course? Can I see the syllabus? Is this one of the courses that could satisfy the diversity requirement? And given what Professor Farr was just saying about when you walk into the classroom, you are political, there's another amazing social psychologist, Troy Duster. I don't know if you know him. He has retired from NYU, and his books have been translated into 6 or 7 languages. One time he came to my classroom to talk about the sociology of diversity and the hierarchy of difference. And he talked about African literature, Latino or Hispanic literature, Asian literature, and literature. So he's asking, so why do we talk about all these other different kinds of literatures, and then there's literature? What does that mean? When we talk about history, so there's history, then there's African American history, Asian history, etc. So I think part of the point that you were making is, why do we have all these subcategories when it's all the history of life in this country? It's the literature of the peoples who live and have citizenship in this country. So one of the things that we have to transcend, I think, to get around thinking in these separate silos about the things that we do, is to be willing to talk with everyone about the things that we do. We, I think, sometimes make the mistake of assuming that everyone else should know about us. And that's not always the case. And then there are those who say, well, I'm tired of educating everybody else about us or about me. But I think if we're going to get to a place of common ground, then we have to be willing to do that. I think that to be born in the community that you're born in and grow up in that community does not guarantee that you're going to know about every other community. So the conversation with the faculty is key. And one way I think that we can move from this discussion today to the next step is to perhaps ask the faculty senate, whoever, and to talk with the entire senate can be ineffective, because, I mean, you can't have a conversation with 50, 100, 150 people. And so those who are responsible for the curriculum and topics like that, I think that a group of students can have an audience with a group of faculty who are responsible for those decisions and talk about how we think our curriculum can be enriched by clearly defining these different courses that we either have now or could have, and then how can we work these into helping to educate the entire undergraduate campus by a requirement that says, and define that requirement. Because right now there is a requirement, but I would wager that some of you don't even know that that requirement is there, and that those 60 courses are there. So can we put those courses in a category that says diversity and inclusion or something like that? So you can go to that and see what they are. So maybe that a conversation would help with all of that.
Right, so to be specific in terms of building on what JJ has just talked about, it's learning outcome number 5 called citizenship, and it does talk in the language about sexuality and race and everything else, and the courses are listed. As I mentioned, some of them do have a title that have to do with inequalities, but a lot of them have to do with cultural and global awareness. And I think going and having people look at that, and then as JJ mentioned, informing the faculty and giving ideas about what other classes should be included, that bringing up that level of dialogue around what should be included in that category is pretty important. It's there, but there really isn't any words related to diversity and inclusion within the description of that learning outcome. So when you go online, look up, it's learning outcome number 5 called citizenship, and it talks about cultural awareness, and those are really some of the things that they're measuring in terms of the classes and outcomes.
I think we should say a word about learning outcome, because the students aren't always aware of the administrative process that gives rise to the regulations and the lineups and all that. So the learning outcome, that's part of the process that the committee went through in developing the new Common Core. So the question was raised, well, what is it that we're trying to do with the Common Core? What do we want to be able to say about what our students know when they take these courses? That's what's meant by outcome. So you may not find what you're looking for if you look up outcome, depending on depending on where you look in the online. So, but I think it still warrants a good conversation between students and faculty. So we'll work with folks to see if we can get that to happen. Obviously, it's not going to happen before Christmas, right? So I think it's a good project task to work on. Other comments, questions?
Yeah, I want to get back on the subject of stereotypes.
Okay.
And I think that we need to note that there is space for the productive use of stereotypes by people of color and even white people vis-a-vis white people. I think we need to use maybe even broad, sweeping generalizations to describe white people, not in terms of inconsequential stereotypes like white people can't dance, but things like white people just don't get how race relations work, how systematic, institutionalized racism works. And I think this is important because usually my white liberal peers would say something like, well, that's not all white people, but they need to understand, well, yeah, of course, you need to be about quotidian struggles against racism. And a lot of liberal whites are still complicit. Like, sorry, what's your name?
That's Professor Farr from philosophy.
Professor Farr. Yeah, like Professor Farr said, like, even if you are a liberal right, you can still, through the actions that you use, you can still participate in systems of institutional racism. And I think that, you know, like I said on the question of stereotypes, I think that's an important discussion to be had. And when you were giving the anecdote about the woman that walks into the room and feels uncomfortable and is unable to perform adequately, I think that white people need to feel uncomfortable, even if, you know, people of color are using broad, sweeping generalizations to describe them, and even if they are liberal as well, because I think that promotes a sort of degree of self-reflexivity that can allow us to analyze and finally understand the basis for the insidious nature of racism.
I think you bring up some good points.
I'm so proud of what you said. It reminds me that we must be doing something right in our curriculum. So tell me your major and what year are you?
Political science.
Okay.
I'm a junior, and I'm majoring in political science and international studies.
I would just like to add on to what he said. I think a lot of this, while it's important to talk to faculty and staff and to make changes within the university, a lot of this has to be self-reflection. You have to take possession and control of your identity because we all face stereotypes, whether it's as a female, as a white, as African American, Latino, whether it's even from where you're from, inner city, rural area. All of these things make up your identity, but they don't have to define you. And I think when you realize that, that's when we'll really be able to make steps forward, to be able to make changes within ourselves and as a university. So start personally and then move out.
May I make a comment just because I think if it's felt that I generalize and I said are white trans, I didn't mean that whites don't get it. It's like a surgeon knows what a brain tumor is. He knows and she knows like the best of what a brain tumor is, but only I feel it because I have the brain tumor. I know you understand it, but I have the pain. So it just, you know.
That's a good analogy.
Comment on what you said. Kind of what you had, your comment. It really sounds good. Everyone should personally reflect, but it's like, at what point will people get it? Because if people could personally reflect and get it, then we wouldn't have this problem. We wouldn't have this discussion. So sometimes it takes the outside forces to educate people. So what can we do to help people get to that point?
Behind you.
I don't know if you all are familiar with the implicit association test at Harvard. If you haven't done that, I would get online and all you have to do is type in implicit association test and it will take you to a website where it will take you through age and gender and race and other types of things and really get at, I think, a lot of what you all are talking about is what are some of the biases that we bring personally and really elevates your level of awareness. But it's a really great website and project if you're not familiar with it.
That's called Project Implicit. You can find it online that way.
Yeah, 2 people. Well, you had share everybody who has spoken.
I agree with you that a lot of white people haven't been self-reflective or self-reflexive, and I think that it shouldn't necessarily be the burden on people of color to, call them out. But I think that the problem is that there's a lot of instances when we're not calling them out or, placing their whiteness on display or countergazing them and telling them that this is what it means to be white, this is your place in the world, this is what it means for the status of race relations in this country. When you do that, it sort of ruptures their sort of complicity in the fact that we're living in, a post-racial society, or that there isn't the existence of racism, such that that uncomfortability makes it so they're forced to be self-reflexive. And I think that that is an effective and useful strategy. Obviously there are a lot of other ways that we can do this, but I think that, both people of color and even white people themselves, like I said, need to start countergazing white people in these spaces and pointing out their place in the world in order for them to become self-reflexive. And I guess there's just not enough of that.
This gentleman from this way. I just want to make sure you've had your hand up several times.
You referred to him first, that's all.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so now we can.
I just wanted to highlight, I'm a psychologist who works at the Counseling Center, and last year, and some of us have had the opportunity to attend Humanity Academy through the HR department that Marietta Watts has put together. It's a week-long program, and our group said, I wish everybody, not only faculty and staff, but every student could go through this. And it's something that, it costs departments, I had to be away from the office for a week, but was an incredible experience. And I'm a psychologist, I've had training, so I should be open and on all these things, but Humanity Academy was this amazing experience. And I think that I wish something, our office was able to send 3 or 4 of us. Not every office can do that, and not every student, I think it was over the summer or spring, it was over spring break. And so, not every student could go to it. And it's one of those things that I wish we could be doing more of that. And Marietta can't be the only person who's doing that, but that program is incredible. And I just want to send a big plug for it because it has these conversations. You do the implicit awareness test. These are the conversations we're having. And we didn't unfortunately have any students as part of that cohort, and I know students are invited, but I just want to put a plug in that was an incredible experience, and we need to have more of those kind of things.
A couple thoughts. This goes back to the very beginning of the conversation. I just wanted to call attention to the presence of positive stereotype threats as well. That's something that, when I think of stereotype threat, that is another piece of that often gets dismissed or overlooked. When you make a positive assumption about someone based on one external characteristic, sometimes that can limit their comfort asking for help or admitting a vulnerability or a weakness or something like that, and it can actually cut them off from help that would help them grow or be more authentic to themselves. So I just want to make sure that we have a collective understanding of that. My name is Nathan Miles. I also work at the Counseling Center. I'm a psychologist. And then the other thing, I've worked in different settings, and I've had my awareness raised, and it's an ongoing process for everybody. But there have been a couple really profound experiences I've had working with populations that are marginalized or discriminated against. And I think it's very powerful when you take that learning and you start sharing it with people within your own sphere of influence. So when you hear a microaggression that's perpetuated by family members or friends or even coworkers sometimes, making sure that you're stepping up and having the courage to point that out to them, and taking ownership of your own biases, because we all have them. We all have prejudice, we all bias. There's biological or evolutionary purposes for that, or reasons, I should say. And so you really have to have that humility to acknowledge that you struggle with it too, and you're still learning and developing as a person, and but also stepping outside of your own growth and challenging other people that you see acting in discriminatory ways.
I think that there's been quite a few great points that's been brought up into light. And I do agree with the common consensus that it is on us to a point, but as an institution of higher learning, that it is our responsibility, especially as a flagship, to not just do diversity, but to harbor and embrace diversity. And so we have that task at hand, but also in regards to a matter here that's on campus is that we are in a bit of an identity crisis on this campus. How do we not only harbor those identities, bring them into light and embrace these individuals, not only just as students and student organizations inside the classroom, but
discriminatory,
as part of the whole entire holistic campus community, but also how do we promote and what things can we do or ideas to harbor those identities and show intersectionality of those identities. It seems that there's been a lot of conversation and it's great to have support, but we're still making it finite into those boxes of identities when it should be dotted lines. So what else can we do, and things that we can be intentional and mindful to show that intersectionality?
And I've had a chance to talk briefly. You are thoughtful when it comes to this thing. May I ask you to share what you think? But I'd love to hear from others about what we do.
Well, it's something that we can do with an intentional programming and also class design. It's something that you can't, I understand the argument that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But at the same time, we do have to be intentional with diversity classes. We do have to look at work smart and hard in regards to having these education processes within core requirement for a specific diversity class. And then having these groups that come together in regards to shared programming, which has seemed to be the best light within organizations, activities, colleges, and doing these collaborations to show the fluidity of these identities.
You said you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But we can make them thirsty. So I want to know, what are we doing to make them thirsty? That's what I'd like to know. Just follow it up.
One thing I would say about some things we can do when an opportunity comes up, such as what's happened here in the past couple months, the university needs to take an official stance on something like that, like release a statement, because, I mean, when this happened, Black UK, we protested and we've done die-ins and things like that, and it would be nice to know that the university was supporting these type of actions. Further, another example would be earlier this semester, the MPHC, we have a page, and a student commented the N-word on the page, and when it was brought to the university, we kind of got this hand-wavy, oh, well, it's a free speech type thing. So when the opportunity comes to act on these type of events, I think if the university takes a stronger stance, maybe update the student code of conduct to include cyberbullying, because that's a real thing, you know. So just things like that would be tangible change. So.
I also think that some of these discussions. Oh, sorry, I apologize. My name is Dan Walensky, and I'm a new faculty member in the counseling psychology program. Having spaces for these conversations to happen among students, but also among faculty, within departments. Power plays a big role in all of this. And I don't know how much as a community we all understand about our different challenges in naming things as we see them, experiencing, you know, as a very junior person, I like to use relationships to address racism when I see it in my department, in my college, and there's a risk there. And so these are community discussions that I think need to happen from top to the bottom and back up.
Hi, I'm Carol Taylor, the social justice educator at the Violence Intervention and Prevention Center. And what I'd like to say is myself and the rest of our staff had a real difficult conversation. But it was real intentional. And it has changed the dynamics in our office. And it's also changed the way that we do our role on this campus. And it will inform how we serve students, staff, and faculty. But I have to be real honest, like it was a painful discussion for lots of reasons. And I bring all of that up to say is that at some point, everybody's gonna be uncomfortable. Like as a person of color on this campus, sometimes I'm uncomfortable. When law enforcement is riding behind me, I'm real uncomfortable. So we made the decision as a staff to be courageous in that conversation. And that's, I feel like, what we have to do. We can dance around things and we can try and play the oppression Olympics, which people love to do. But at the stage that we're at right now on this campus, we have to have those real conversations. And we have to do those from a place of concern and care. I laid it out for staff. Not to make anybody feel bad, but because I needed them to understand how this was impacting me, how it changed the dynamics in our office, and how, as a collective, we have to come together under this umbrella. Now, they may not get every single thing, and they're not going to experience this world the same way that I do, but I don't need them to. I need them to understand that things play out differently for me than they do for them. And our students are the exact same way. And so I'm really, really proud of that conversation that we had because it did change. It changed, for me, it changed all the dynamics. And so I felt like they get it now. And what they don't get, they'll try to figure out. And so I just encourage people, you have to have those courageous conversations. Yes, are people gonna get mad? They certainly are. Yes, are people gonna get upset? Absolutely. But if you do it from a place where you're trying to really make an impact, like you get people personally, and then once they're impacted personally, then their actions change. And so I just encourage everybody, especially staff and faculty, when we are of service to students, first and foremost. And we have to be able to model some of those kinds of things for them. We have to be able to step up and have those difficult conversations. We can't say, well, you students go over there and talk about this and then let us know what you figured out. No, we have to do that too. And so as a collective, students, staff, and faculty, we all have to have those difficult conversations. And I just encourage people to step out on faith and just know that people will get it. They absolutely will get it. And so my folks at VIP Center, like my coworkers, all of us, like they did exactly what I expected them to do after we had that conversation. So that it works. It absolutely works, but you have to be courageous about it, and you have to be willing to be uncomfortable with some of the realities that folks of color have to deal with.
And you have to know that one time is not enough.
Oh, right.
One thing I want to hit on, piggybacking off Ms. Carroll and your question, Dr. Capilouto, about how we program something. I think one of our biggest things is financial equality. In some of our organizations, I'm speaking kind of on behalf of the Black Student Union. A problem that we have is a big deal with inclusion. A lot of time, there are other events that the student activities boards will put on, or the student government will put on, that aren't necessarily for the entire campus, but like Ms. Carroll was saying, us as Black minorities, we kind of shy away from those programs because we don't feel included on a yearly basis. We don't feel like we are there. So we as the Black Student Union, in a sense, take it on as our responsibility to try to engage in that inclusion, but it's very difficult when we don't have the funding to say put on or bring somebody in to speak on topics like this. It's great to have individuals like you guys that come and speak community-wise, but when you want to do a larger picture and show that inclusion on campus, it's really difficult when you don't have the necessary funds to go out and get somebody to speak on their behalf, or just engage the students overall in a safe environment. Like Ms. Carroll was saying, it's very hard. We just had that for the open discussion about our Ferguson topic. That was a great way for us to open up an open dialogue between the students and faculty. But the question is, how do you do that again? And how do you do it at a larger scale? And sometimes it's you think about it, but you're like, well, if we had this money, we could do this, we could open up this, we could put in a program, start an initiative, funding or something like that. So I think one of the biggest issues will kind of be financial equality between organizations and just programs in general.
Do you mind if I add something along that? I think that there's a lot of truth in what you just said, and it's a problem among quite a few cultural-based organizations like International Student Council, Indian Student Association, Muslim Student Association. These groups that believe that are so part of the UK community and so essential to the everyday functions of student life here, have been placed upon their backs the responsibility of saying, well, you have to figure it out to celebrate your culture and celebrate who you are within yourself. And there's a lot of truth that reigns within that no person should be told, well, go seek SGA funding if you want to go celebrate your culture. It's something that if we want to preach diversity and say that we have diversity, we have to harbor those from the core.
I would just like to say, everyone's talking about these discussions and how we should have these discussions, but I also like to say, if you want to participate in a discussion, you need to be knowledgeable about the topic. And not only do you need to know about what you're speaking on, but you also need to be sensitive to the comments that you make. Because on social media, people post all these different things, and they have their opinions, which is fine. Like, everyone's not going to agree, but I ask that you guys just really be sensitive, because it's very personal when you're talking about somebody's culture or somebody's background. And I think that it's just a lot of insensitivity when these topics come up.
I just wanted to speak to the topic that has been coming up as far as continuing these conversations, and I want to highlight one of the programs that we do through the MLK Center. Our Soup and Substance series that meets every third Thursday at 5:30. We have these discussions every month. So I encourage folks, it's not just about coming out when the heated situations are going on like Ferguson, but it's like Dr. Jackson said, it's not just having that one conversation, it's continuing the conversations. So I really, really, really encourage folks to come out every third Thursday at 5:30. We're having these conversations. The Ferguson conversation we had, that was our third time having that conversation, but we just had more turnout because of the lack of the indictment. So I encourage folks to continue to come out. As well, I want to acknowledge the time is about 1:10 at this point. So I'm not sure, Dr. Jackson, Dr. Capilouto, you all schedules, but I want to acknowledge that to everyone. We have this room until 1:30 just in case, but I do want to acknowledge that we're over 1 o'clock.
Hi, I'm Valerie Reister, and I work with Student Support Services here on campus. And I've listened to a lot of the conversation, and I have a really difficult time at certain points because people do have a hard time understanding that your state in of itself is divided. It's divided in multiple groups. First, we have 121 counties. People are known by their county. Then you're known for rural Appalachian. Then you're known for northeastern or eastern Appalachian. You're not known for being white or what have you. And inside of that, you have a socioeconomic status that's completely different. So even though the person may look like a certain group, you need to be very, very, very careful in not realizing that their situation may not be that far different from what you're sitting in. Because they do not speak in class. They do not dress the same. They do not feel comfortable on this campus. Heightened group that does not attend school. They have the largest group that does not actually have a high school degree. They have the largest methamphetamine area that's growing. So when you really look at your state, you may want to really think about, when you're looking at your college classroom, that just because people look or appear to be like the majority, they may not be as dumbfounded on a situation. So again, being really careful and very, very aware of whom is sitting in the room with you when you're having these conversations. Sensitivity is very key. But at the same token, sensitivity runs in multiple directions. Asking the questions is one thing. Asking the questions in a way that a person wants to respond is something completely different. We have these conversations in my office daily. Why? Because I ask the questions. I also call them on the carpet when they say something that I find offensive because they don't realize where I grew up. So I think it's one of those things that you need to be very careful when you're sitting and looking at some place that not everybody in the same restaurant as you may all be coming from the same background as what you think they're coming from. Yes, there are some things that come complicitly with being Caucasian, but that doesn't mean that they don't experience some form of a minority factor when they come to the campus. Thank you.
Somebody over here. Oh, you can translate.
Go ahead. So one thing I was thinking about too.
Identify yourself.
I'm Jane Hopkins. I'm another person from the Counseling Center. Another psychologist. One of the things that I was thinking about in terms of stereotype threat and being a white person, and I certainly appreciate the varying backgrounds that people come from. I've been reading, a billion things on social media lately about all kinds of things. But in terms of stereotype threat, I think one of the things that can really keep, and I'm going to talk in broad generalities here, keep white people from wanting to have conversations like this is the stereotype threat of being racist by talking about race. So by even mentioning it, I'm going to fear that I appear racist by talking about race, and so that's very scary, and I think that's one of the things that keeps a lot of white people from doing that, which drives me a little bit bananas. But I recognize that I do that too. I get afraid to say those kinds of things or to ask about race or identify people by race because I don't want to appear racist. When I know, and there's plenty of research out there that says, if you point to somebody or you're looking at a group of people and you're trying to pick out one person, that it's easier and better, and people feel as though when the white person is involved in that they're not being as racist when they recognize that race is a factor in something. When people are trying not to do that, then they're perceived as being more racist when they're trying actively not to be, which seems strange. But I think it comes back to that whole stereotype threat thing. It makes it really scary to talk about.
I agree with you. I just think that people need to be more conscious of that as well. As far as, I think that a lot of people need to be educated as far as to think like, a lot of people have this way of thinking and sometimes they don't even know. And so you can't really just jump on them because they're asking for one. I think we should embrace them because they are asking. And if something comes out wrong, then you should correct them. That's the whole purpose of it. I took History 261 with Dr. Jacoby Williams. And he did a great job of doing that. It was a Caucasian girl, white girl in the class, and she was asking questions and making comments, but at the same time, they came out kind of wrong to the majority of the class, which was black people in the class. And so he just did a great job of like correcting her and making her look at it in different ways. And also at the same time keeping the class, I guess, calm when she made comments, because certain people want to, jump all over her and do things like that because she made the comments. But at the same time, we have to realize that they don't, like most people don't know, it's just a consciousness. And that's why I just really want the consciousness to be brought forth as far as in taking classes like that, like History 261 or Sociology class. Those things really come forth, and people get it. Like when they actually have to open their eyes to certain things like that, they start to get it. So.
And does it fatigue you to have to always be in that position?
Not really, but I mean sometimes it does. When you just constantly have to explain yourself, but I just feel like if we add that to, I guess, like the classes that we take, or people who enjoy embracing these type of, I guess, situations and conversations as far as in our professors who do a great job of doing that, and it wouldn't fatigue like students as much in order to like have those conversations. And I mean everybody, I feel like everyone should take these classes because, like I just said, black students in the class learn that, hey, I can't really just jump on her because she just doesn't understand.
Right.
And you have to be consciously aware that, like, it's like, I don't think anybody in the room is like a bad person, even though they might come off wrong when saying something, because you might do that yourself sometimes. So you just have to bring that consciousness forth, and you just have to understand.
That's the reason I asked you the question, because when you think about the demographics, African Americans, Latinos, Asians are just a small part of the population, especially in Kentucky. And so there are a lot of white people who may not get it, and a lot of white people who may want to get it for fear of, ooh, if I say something, ooh, how am I going to come off, and will they want to jump all over me? So I ask you the question because my admonition is you cannot tire of helping people to understand. You can't afford to get fatigued doing that. If only for sheer numbers, but also for the passion of wanting more inclusion and wanting people to understand each other. You have to be willing to always be ready to explain something, but also to get to understand something. Just because we're in a state with the majority white doesn't mean that we understand everything about whites.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Medina, and I'm a graduate student in the Educational Policy and Evaluation graduate program. And I wanted to talk about the Latino community. Sometimes it's a community that gets overlooked because of white privilege. A lot of Latinos do pass as white, and sometimes they maintain that privilege because of stereotype threat. There's a lot of stereotypes that are linked to their Hispanic identity, therefore they choose not to practice their culture. And I think that's something very important on this campus. I'm the graduate advisor for the Latino Student Union, and we see this a lot where a lot of our members don't want to be part of it because they don't want to be associated with a negative stereotype, and this could be really damaging to the self-identity and the identity process that they go through.
Gerald, right here, and then we'll come up here.
Hi, my name is Lissa Pohl. I'm from the Center for Leadership Development over in the College of Agriculture. And, excuse me, I am curious about what some of the initiatives are going to be here on campus for each college, because I know each college has its own diversity associate dean, and just wondering what's next as far as getting that. In the College of Agriculture, we're like, we're misfits. We're kind of over on the other side of campus, divided by the medical center, so we're very disconnected from any kind of conversation like this. Our students are not, exposed, both white and black students in the College of Agriculture. So I'm wondering, what are the new initiatives that are going to be happening on campus to start really developing these conversations, college by college and inter-college?
Hi, I'm Ingrid Adams. I'm a professor in dietetics and human nutrition, so I'm also from the College of Agriculture. But I was very happy to see this occasion for individuals to come by and discuss. And first of all, I think this is what the university should be about, providing opportunities for all students and all individuals to have intellectual discourse. And I think we have moved away from that. And I think this should become the central point again. We don't actually all agree in terms of religion and race, and that's fine. But the university is the place where we should be able to come together, and we should be able to state our views respectfully, and we should be able to gain better understanding of each other, and we should be able to leave accepting each other. I am also concerned that at the university, that we're failing our students. At the end of 4 years, I would like to see our students leave and be better able to face racism and all those things that they will face. There's no getting over it. You're going to have problems in the workplace. Are we preparing our students to be able to deal with those problems? And I think we have quite a lot of courses. I have to put it close. I think we have quite a lot of courses, and we're calling them by different names. But are we really achieving our objectives? Are we evaluating these courses? Are we getting closer to our goals? What is our goal in the first place? We need to have that clear so that while we are planning steps and initiatives so that our students achieve these goals, we need to be sure that, okay, this is the goal, this is the target, and we need to be sure whatever steps we're doing, globalization, whatever term we use, it must be getting our students closer to the point that when they leave here, they can make a difference. And Ferguson and all these other issues we would be able to address these issues a little better. I am very concerned that in the United States, still, race is such a huge issue. We need to prepare our students to make a difference as they go out there.
Okay, one last comment, and then we need to sum up. We're mindful of the time and how long we can be in this room and all of that.
So extending on what you were saying about the Latino experience, I'll disclose I myself am Latino. But one of the things that I kind of struggle with is sort of understanding how my sort of like light-skinned white privilege like informs my personal experience. And I think that one thing that Latinos need to be cognizant of is that, you know, white assimilation is a thing, it's happening, and we need to realize the nature of, you know, what our skin color means for our place in the world, and, you know, to even understand the way that the society operates, especially in places like this, like Lexington, is that civil society, you know, for the most part, a large part of it is, you know, anti-black. It operates on a white-black binary, tries to assimilate people like Latinos into the white side. And we also need to be self-reflexive of our criticisms of black people as well, because I see this happening. I'm from the south side of Chicago. You know, Latino neighborhoods, like, we're like, oh, or at least our neighborhoods aren't as bad as the black neighborhoods. And that's a discourse that is used by a lot of Latinos in these areas, and I'm just like, this is messed up. You know, this means that we're doing the oppression Olympics kind of thing, where we're not undercutting who dictates the terms of these oppression Olympics, which is really the structures of white supremacy and whiteness that exist institutionally and systematically.
Is that a burning comment back there? Because we do need to close. Did you have your hand up?
I just want to meet this young man.
Okay.
We were just communicating across the crowd that we want to have a conversation.
Yes, that's all.
Oh, so you got a sign language thing going on over there? Okay. First, I would like to thank you all for taking the time to come and participate in this. If you thought we would walk away with solutions and immediate change, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but that's not going to happen. Because we've been talking about racism for as long as you've been born, and your grandchildren will still be discussing it. That not to say that there's nothing that we can do, that to say that this very discussion is one of the things that we do and need to do, and we could do more, but we also have to move beyond discussion to action, but consider that everybody has a different idea of what that action should be. So the discussions will never be unnecessary. They will always be needed. So what are some little things that we can do? There are some things that that are in your control right now when you walk out of the room. And that's a personal conviction to do what one individual can do. I'm thinking about night writing now. One man can make a difference. And a woman too. But I'm just saying that while institutions gather resources and opportunities to bring about discussions like this and a change, an institution is a collective of individuals. So unless you commit also, the institution is going to get nowhere. So there are lots of things that we need to do. We got it. One of the things is take a look at the curriculum. How do we talk about the curriculum? Where can you go to easily find out information about the curriculum so that you can make decisions about your course lineup and what you're going to take? At the same time, you should tell us what you think is missing. And by us, I mean the provosts, the deans, and the department heads. If you're taking a course in whatever it is, literature, languages, whatever, take the liberty to go to the department head and say, I think we need a course in X, Y, and Z, and let's have a discussion about that. It doesn't have to be a university-wide discussion. It can be a discussion that takes place right in your department. And as Carol said, right in your office, right in your whatever your association is. So that's one thing that I get. Second thing that I get is that a lot of you made some great comments about whites, and thank you for your comments about sometimes you're as afraid as anybody else to talk about these things, because how many people really enjoy being uncomfortable? Well, they're not, you don't look like sadomasochists in here, but we do have to allow ourselves discomfort in order to make some progress. Someone said progress relies on the unreasonable person. Now that doesn't mean you have to get out there and protest with placards and shouting about things that aren't going to make sense. It says, can we come together in a deliberative process with civility and sincerity and talk about what am I experiencing, what does it do to me, and now can we talk about how that might change? Because it's happening not only to you, but it's happening to others in different ways that define their own experience. I think the Habitat for the, I'm sorry, Maria, the Humanity Academy, you can tell where my head is, what I was doing the other night. Anyway, the Humanity Academy is a wonderful opportunity. I've been through it myself. But it is one opportunity, and it is limited in the number of people it can handle at once. So that may be something to talk about. How can we replicate that particular program across the university on a schedule that makes sense? Which means we have to take Maria's thumbnail and clone her, or we get some other people ready to assist with that process. So, so those are a few things I've taken from the conversation, and now I would like for President Capilouto to echo.
Sure. First of all, I thank everybody in this room, and despite the challenges we all acknowledge here, I am glad to see the hearts and minds of the people here that support our students, first of all, and what you've been willing to undertake in your recognition of our challenges. Second of all, I want to tell you that I have a responsibility to myself first, and then a larger responsibility to this campus. I will confess to you, sometimes I struggle with both of them. One of the things that's been consuming my time that I read now is about privilege. That can be a very galvanizing term for people. I recognize, thanks to faculty and others who have given me things to read, and I also like to listen to a particular program. It's called On Being by Krista Tippett. She's very good. She is, as she says, it's a program for people of no faiths and all faiths. Through those self-reflections, I hope, and days like today, I can be a better president and tackle some of the things that you are talking about. Because we have to be more intentional, we have to be more honest with ourselves. We have fantastic ideas. It is an immense responsibility that I have and the university must embrace. I want to say this about some of the things that have happened and the expectations of me to comment, especially the posting of the N-word, which, if you know me, is probably the most abhorrent, offensive term that I know, given my life. Right? My biggest disappointment in that, which I'll let people know, was what I didn't hear and who I didn't hear from. It's not me. I mean, I know what I think. In many ways, when I speak out on something and it is lecturing to a campus, it is not as effective as when your peer turns to you and lectures and tells you how it was wrong, especially among students. So I worked on that quietly, but I'll let people know the deafening silence was a big disappointment to me. Right? So I am there, but I want a larger community there too. And then when it gets to these offensive words and this whole struggle between First Amendment rights and so forth, this is what you hear when you're president. The day we have people who assemble who are anti-abortion. Okay? I have people that come to my office that write me letters who say what they experienced in walking past those expressions or demonstrations was the vilest thing in the world, and it is my responsibility to curb it. So I get those on all kinds of issues. It is really one I struggle with. And I oftentimes say that, what is best about free speech is we can have more free speech. All right? So I want to let you know I struggle with all that too. And I have lots of experiences on this campus from different perspectives here. And that is a conversation I hope we continue. Okay? So thank you for being here, and thank you for what you bring to our university. My daughter hates when I say this. She says I'm lecturing again, but all I ask, especially of students, is be safe. So thank you.
And we'd like to wish everybody an enjoyable winter holiday break and come back in January renewed to continue the conversation and find out what we can do individually and together.
So before everyone leaves, I just want to thank Dr. Capilouto, Dr. Jackson, and Dr. Smith for leading us in the conversation today. And want to thank everyone who's here as far as the student, faculty, and staff, because the conversations can't happen if we're not in the room together. And just want to encourage folks to continue the conversation, whether it's in MLK programming or other things happening across the campus.
Can we make this available in terms of sharing conversation and all, to let more people know about what was said here? I'm happy to be part of that too.
Yep. And just a couple plugs before people leave. For next semester, look for this series to continue every second Wednesday at 12 o'clock. The soup and substance that I'll do with Dr. Jackson, I'll also mention every third Thursday at 5:30 in the center. As well, February 17th, we're going to have Dear White People, the movie show, and we're doing that along with the late night film series. And we're going to have the director here on campus to have a conversation like this with us all. Also, please fill out evaluations as you're leaving. Your feedback is important to us.